Hey, John here. In today's video, I'm going to share a practice technique that will improve your synchronization, your tone, and your speed if practiced correctly and made into a habit. So out of all the practice techniques I've shared so far, if I could only pick one of them going forward, this would be it. I'm also going to show you another technique that used in conjunction with this one will make it even more effective. I'm going to be using this lick to demonstrate the technique. If you want the tabs, you have a link in the description below and that will get you access to all the tabs for all the lessons so far. If you practice this one correctly and make it into a habit, I can guarantee you that your technique will get a real upgrade. I was lucky enough to find out about this technique early on in my playing, and it has really helped my technique throughout the years. I first read about it in Troy Stetina's Speed Mechanics book, and I didn't fully understand the concept right away. He called it transition time, and that's also the name that I'm going to stick to here. So even though I read about it in that book first, I didn't really understand the concept until I went to GIT in Hollywood back in '95. So that was around 2 years later. So the second time I heard about it was via David Oakes, a classical guitar teacher at GIT. He taught this concept in a class called Playing Techniques, and when he demonstrated it, that's when I first really got it. And I'm telling you all this stuff so you can know the backstory of it and also why I think it's important to really take your time and make sure you understand the whole thing, because if you don't get it right, it's not going to help you. Transition time simply refers to the speed at which you move from note to note when you play an instrument. So the whole idea behind this technique is to mimic the movements that you need to do when you play very quickly, but you do this at a very slow pace. And what I mean by that is that if you play quarter notes at 60, so 1 note per second, you still want to keep your movements from note to note as if you were playing at top speed, whatever that might be, 16th notes at 200 or whatever. But that's what you're striving for. So if I do this, let's play that thing. If I do that without the transition time, it would sound something like this. And this is what a lot of people do when they practice slowly, and then they feel like slow practice doesn't really help them. What you want to do instead is this. So I'm gonna play the same thing at roughly the same tempo, and I'm gonna go as quickly as I can from note to note. So it sounds like this. And as you can hear, you don't get the gaps in between the notes anymore. And it's a very light touch in the right hand. It's sort of a crisp feeling when you do it correctly. So that's what you're striving for when you're practicing. And the most important thing here is that you keep the tempo low, especially initially before you get used to this technique. So you want to do this where you have full control and you can really focus on moving as quickly as possible from note to note, because that's the secret behind this whole exercise. And it's subtle, but it's very easy to get wrong, and I've seen a ton of students get it wrong, so that's why I'm so specific about it here in this video. I've seen several super virtuosos talk about this specific practice technique as well. So Hilary Hahn, for example, she talked about it on her blog, where basically she said that you need to slow everything down and practice slowly, but maintain the fast transition. So that's the same thing. I saw another cellist talk about practicing scales, and you have to focus on the quick transitions. And it's a huge thing if you get it right. But like I said, it's very easy to sort of overlook it and not do it. And then you think like, well, slow practice doesn't really work for me. But if you do it this way, I'm 100% sure that you're going to feel a big difference in your synchronization, your tone, and eventually your speed as well. You want to make this into a habit, and that's what I've done. So whenever I practice something that's fairly slow, I automatically go to this fast transition mode of playing. So you're mimicking fast playing, but at a very slow speed. So it's almost like a speed burst from one note to the next. So you're just playing this note, hold that as long as you need to, and then you go to the next note as quickly as you can. And the beauty of this is, of course, you have time to relax, you can control everything, and you have a chance to really look at what your hands are doing. So I'm going to demonstrate this now on the lick that I played in the beginning, and then I'm going to talk about another concept as well that I use in conjunction with this that makes it even better. So this one is just an E minor, starting here on the flat 7. So I'm gonna go up in the natural E minor scale, and like I said, you have tabs available. So at the end here I played the 5 major chord, so that's technically the harmonic minor scale. So my main focus here is to make sure that I get the quickest transitions that I can, and the tempo can vary, but I would say that when you start doing this yourself, please start at a lower tempo. And it's not about starting at a slow tempo and then raising the tempo until you get to whatever your dream BPM is. It's about sticking to a tempo where you feel in full control, and instead of trying to raise the tempo, try instead to always focus on getting a little bit quicker transition, and that's what's really gonna affect your top speed eventually. So what I focus on when I practice like this is to get those quick transitions. And you need to be at a slow tempo when you do this. So you won't be able to get that if you do like, you know, that's not necessarily a very fast tempo, but it's very hard to get the fastest transitions possible when you do this. And that's the whole point of the technique. So do yourself a favor, use a metronome at first, and David Oakes had us start at 50 BPMs, which I think is almost a bit too slow because you're just waiting for that click. But start around maybe 60 to 70 BPMs and play 1 note per click. And your goal is to just play the note exactly on the click, and then you don't move until right before the next click. So you need to move very quickly. So my main focus when I practice like this is to get those transitions as quick and sharp as possible. And one way to gauge that you're doing this is to listen for gaps in your playing. If you get this down correctly, it should be a very, very tiny inaudible gap between the notes. So if you play, you know, 1 note on the first beat and then the second note on the second beat, you want to make sure that it's very legato, it's very connected. You don't want any gaps at all. So something like this. So you want to avoid, and that's obviously exaggerated, but it's very important to get this right. And another thing that this technique enables you to do is to work on something that I call finger choreography. So finger choreography is just my fancy pants name for preparing the next finger in a sequence as you play the previous one. So if we have this scale again, when I'm playing the first finger, I make sure that my second finger is in place, and that's pretty easy if you're not doing anything like this. Well, just make sure that your second finger is in the vicinity of the next note. And then as I play the second note, I make sure that my pinky is in the vicinity as well. But if you don't do something really stupid when you play 3-note per string scales, your fingers are probably going to be in line with the frets you're going to play anyway. So it doesn't take much preparation here. But where it really comes into its own is when you change strings. So when we change strings here, when I play the pinky, the next note would be the index finger. So now I want to prepare that. And when I prepare that on the next string, I can actually rest it on the string, on the fret if possible. It depends on the position shifting and things like that. But in this case I can. And I just want to make sure that I'm on the string, but I'm not actually fretting it. So I'm not doing this, I'm just on top of it. So if you look at this now, when I reach the pinky, look at my index finger. If I do this correctly, my index finger is going to pop up to the next string. So hope that's clear. And I try to synchronize that, so I'm not doing it separately like this. I'm not going index, second finger, pinky, prepare, and then play. Instead, I try to get these down at the same time. So as soon as my pinky goes down on this string, as soon as I play it, this finger pops into place. So So it's mainly at the string crossings that this technique comes into its own. If we apply this to a D minor pentatonic scale, for example, you can see that every time I hit the pinky or the third finger, my index finger is going to go up to the next string. And then when I go back, it's a bit trickier because now you run the risk of muting the string that you're playing, but still it's worth working on. So you go... So you can see that my hand is really efficient when you do this. And of course, when you try to play faster, you're going to lose some of that efficiency. But as you do this more and more, you're going to find that more and more it's going to rub off on your faster playing as well. So that's what we're shooting for. And this finger choreography, I think, is essential when you're working on any kind of fast arpeggios. So if we're playing, for example, this thing, so basically an A major arpeggio, we have 12, 9, 10, 9. So if you look at my index finger here, it's fine this far. But if I keep the finger, you know, just hanging around here, I'm not fretting the string or anything. But if I just let the index finger stay here as I'm playing this note, I'm going to have to move this finger very quickly. And the faster you have to move something, the harder it's going to be to, you know, keep in control. But if you can do this instead, if you look at my index finger again, as soon as I hit the second finger, my index finger is going to pop up here and prepare. So which means that it's much easier for me to get to this string now because I'm already in the place that I need to be. So I don't need to move as quickly. So, and of course I do that on the way back as well. So as soon as I hit the second finger here, my index finger is going to prepare the next string. So this makes a huge difference when you play it faster. Almost feels automatic at that point. So when you practice more and more like this, you're going to find that your fingers sort of get to the place where you want them to be automatically. And I also find this to be a really good way to get your pinky to behave, because you're going to find that to be able to prepare this stuff, you can't really tense up, and you can only get your finger flailing away like this if you're tense in the hand, because I've never seen any student be able to do this. If you put the finger out like this and then you relax the hand, it will immediately pop back in where it should be. So that's why this combination of using transition time and the finger choreography is so powerful. So do yourself a favor, give this a try, and let me know in the comments how it worked out for you, and if you have any questions, of course. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.